How's it rockin', Dween Nation? You're listening to the Dween Sports Podcast. We're about to get underway. But before you give us a listen, we'd love if you could like, comment, subscribe, and share. We are posting weekly sports content, and we want to build up the brand that is Dween Sports. Thank you all, and enjoy. Welcome in, Dween Nation. This is your host, Justin Pies, alongside Genoa Agudelo. And wow, Week 13 came down the wire. What a good Monday night game it was. Jameis Winston threw 6 touchdowns. 2 to the Broncos, 4 to his own team. But it was an exciting game. Me and Genoa went down to the wire. He got the victory, unfortunately, with the Broncos defense getting that late game pick 6. But regardless, still a very exciting week. I'm excited to discuss and take away the most relevant things we found from the week, and then looking forward how it'll affect the rest of the season, as one more week is left in the regular season of fantasy football before playoffs. So this is the make it or break it week. Unfortunately, it's another big bye Mageddon, as some call it, week. 6 teams on bye. So we're going to discuss all of it this week. But before we do, how you doing, Genoa?
Yo, Dween Nation. Justin, what a weekend we had. A week that we had, first off, out of Dween Nation, we hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving, holiday. I know Justin and I had, fun on Thursday. And so, and even Friday, fun Friday. And crazy weekend, two of the best teams in Texas college football went against each other. And obviously you and I, and then the Texans won. So that's, I'm happy, a little bit happier than last week. And so, pretty good week. And then you mentioned Monday Night Football, which was a game that I did not expect to go the way it did. I mean, an absolute shootout there. If you had Jeudy and Jameis Winston in your lineups, wow. But definitely, Justin, a pretty crazy week as we fly into the final week of fantasy, Justin. Crazy how we drafted teams in middle of August, end of August, maybe the first week of September. And now it all comes down to this week to ultimately get into the playoffs.
Yeah, man. And let's dive into these takeaways, because I quickly made a pivot after watching Monday Night Football, which has recently just happened. And mine is that Jerry Jeudy's going to be a league winner. He has totally, broke out in a way that Broncos fans really always wanted. Many fans, when he was drafted in the first round, really wanted. It just didn't pan out in Denver. Now he's with a pass-happy offense with Jameis Winston. And wow, did he go bananas. I mean, he 235 yards, 9 catches, 13 targets, and a score. They lose the game, but I mean, you don't even need them to win these games. You just need Jameis to throw the rock, and he will do that every single week. I mean, Jameis, what do you have? He had 58 pass attempts. Obviously, he was a QB1 on the week as well. So it's just, I know Tillman was out this week, but I just expect Jerry Jeudy to continue to be that A-plus guy that we saw and that we've been seeing. I mean, he's gotten 8+ targets in 5 of his last 6 games. Like, he's on the money. I think the Browns' schedule is not the prettiest over the next couple of weeks. They play against Pittsburgh and Kansas City, but he just had this game at Denver with Pat Surtain guarding him for a lot of the night, and he had a career night. So I expect Jeudy to be a set and forget it play every single week, and especially the last 2 weeks of the fantasy playoffs against the Bengals and the Dolphins.
Yeah, Justin, what a night for Jerry Jeudy. Man, it would have been, good for him if they had come up with that victory. But man, talk about the ultimate revenge game on the team that drafted you. And looking back into that, 2020 draft, I remember, kind of having my own little draft board, long before we had Doing Sports. And it was down to CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy. And I gave the edge to CeeDee Lamb to be the best receiver out of this draft. But I still found it crazy that Jerry Jeudy fell all the way to the 15th pick. I do believe that Jefferson was also in that draft, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, you're right.
And so I did have Jeudy a little bit above Jefferson, just because Jeudy was so fantastic for a couple years in Alabama, while Jefferson had a year at LSU. And so, finally Jerry Jeudy does it. Things in Denver haven't panned out for their guys. Jerry Jeudy, now Russell in Pittsburgh, but look into what they have now, Justin, in Cleveland. I mean, Kevin Stefanski is one of the best offensive, play calls I've ever seen, because he had the same offense, similar breakout with Joe Flacco last year. And now it's kind of all over again with Jerry Jeudy. Not to mention it was Flacco and Amari Cooper last year. Now it's Jameis Winston and Jerry Jeudy. So Justin, I'm gonna 100% agree on your point here because this is literally exactly what happened last year. The only thing is the Browns' record; they're not really fighting for a playoff spot at the moment with their loss, and I think that puts them at 3-9. But definitely, Justin, Jerry Jeudy is a guy that you actually have to start going forward, no matter the schedule, no matter who the Browns play going forward. Maybe if you have like a Mike Evans, CeeDee Lamb, kind of those top 20 receivers, sure. But if you have a Jalen Waddle or DK Metcalf or guys that are struggling like Devontae Adams, obviously he scored a touchdown, or Garrett Wilson, guys on the Jets that might not be getting Aaron Rodgers going forward, you might have to have a second look at definitely starting Jerry Jeudy. One last thing on him, his schedule. You mentioned he doesn't have the Steelers, he doesn't have the Chiefs. I don't think it matters anymore, Justin. I think with the Browns, they're just trying to get a victory. Jameis Winston is the ultimate gunslinger now. Stefanski's just trying to end the season on a good note. So that way they can have some things to look at in the offseason. So definitely like Jerry Jeudy there to be one of the league winners this year. And every year, Justin, it's always someone different, random that wins you leagues. Jerry Jeudy fits that criteria to me. So for one league winner that you think, Justin, I'm going to go with the guy that we kind of talked about last week, and that is Bucky Irving. He's going to be another league winner, Justin. He had a phenomenal game yesterday against the Panthers. Literally carried this Buccaneers team on his back in key situations. It looked like they were going to lose to Carolina yesterday, but Bucky made sure that wasn't going to happen. Looking at Bucky's stats yesterday, he had 152 rushing yards. And that is with Rachaad White getting a good amount of snaps there, Justin. And looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going forward, you got to look at their team in their playoff race, right? In their division hunt. Now, the Falcons have fallen off the grace of their division, and the Panthers are now eyeing to win that division. With Carolina losing yesterday, with New Orleans, struggling and losing as well, Atlanta and Tampa are now tied at 6 wins apiece, vying for that division. And Bucky, he's going to be their workhorse going forward. Look at his schedule, Justin. They get the Vegas Raiders next week. They go to LA, which, they play the Chargers. I do think that, they are beatable in some cases. Bijan had a great game yesterday. Last week it was Derrick Henry over 100 yards. And I do think that this Tampa Bay offense is no longer a pass-heavy offense. They are now a run-heavy offense. They have Bucky Irving, who's now the leading back. And Rachaad White is kind of the guy that's going to get your catches out of the backfield. So I like Bucky Irving. He has tremendous speed there. And then looking into the fantasy playoffs, they get the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, one of the worst rushing defense in the league. And then championship weekend, they get the Panthers again, who, by the way, Bucky Irving had a great game against. So definitely love Bucky Irving as the league winner. If you were a guy, Justin, or a girl who drafted receivers in the first couple rounds, and you have Jettas, maybe A.J. Brown, and you really didn't do much in the running back field, and you were able to scoop up Bucky Irving, look out for your team because you might be on the way to winning a championship.
Yeah, no, I love that take there, Bucky Irving. I was just talking to Jano before, like, I went in the doc, started typing Bucky Irving is my league winner, and I saw Jano already put it. So he beat me to the bullet because it's a great take. I mean, he has been phenomenal. I mean, he was the RB1 on the week on literally 54% of snaps. He only had one more snap compared to Rachaad White, and Rachaad White was outside the top 30 at running back this week. So when Bucky's on the field, he's getting the ball. They rely on him. 25 carries is a crazy number that I would never expect running back of his size to do, but he is taking the mantle up very nicely. And then I'll just reiterate that schedule is phenomenal. Besides that Chargers matchup, he's got the Raiders, Cowboys, and Panthers. I mean, it's too good to be true. And you just gotta keep running with him every week. I'll pat myself on the back a little bit. He was my start of the week last week, was the RB1 on the week, so I'm happy there. But really good take, Jano. I agree. If you got Bucky Irving, be very happy with what you got rolling out towards the playoffs. Moving to the next take, I got Rico Dowdle will be a set it and forget it start rest of the season. So I'm not looking as high as a Bucky Irving league winner type, but they're finally giving Rico the workload that we thought he kind of deserved at the beginning of the year. I mean, if you looked at that backfield, you're like, okay, they have Zeke and Deuce Vaughn, and they use this Lipke guy sometimes, but no real anything really. But for a lot of the season, they've been mixing it in too much, and we're just like, just give Rico the keys. They finally do that this week. He got 70% of the snaps, which is the most he's had all season. And obviously, he was the RB4 on the week. So he had a great game against the Giants, which is a good matchup to take advantage of. But look at his schedule. Cincinnati and Carolina over the next 2 weeks. Those are great plays. Tampa Bay even is a very solid matchup. He does end his season with Philadelphia, so championship week might be a tough one to trot him out there in your lineups. But the next 3 weeks to start the playoffs, get him in your lineups.
Yeah, Justin, great take. And I want to add a little bit more to it. I want to let Dewey Nation know that, Rico Dowdle is now at 600 rushing yards on the season. And there are 5 games left of the season. So there's a chance that Rico Dowdle can potentially get 1,000 yards for the first time in his very young career. And so definitely like Rico Dowdle there. And this is 5th season, and he's never really had a season like this. You can argue even when he was at South Carolina, wasn't really a running back that was really known there. Drafted in the 4th or 5th round, I believe. And so with Rico Dowdle there, you got to look at the Cowboys this way, right? Since their loss to my Texans a few weeks ago, they've had 2 good victories, and with Mike McCarthy's job on the line and with Dak Prescott no longer in the lineup, I do think that Cooper Rush in this offense is going to want to lead on running the football. And kind of on my takeaway that I want to add to it, Justin, is that obviously it's the obvious now. Rico Dowdle is the best back on this football team. Ezekiel Elliott has now become a grandpa. He is now in Dumpsville. You can argue that he's definitely going to be a free agent after this year. It might kind of be on that Michael Thomas, Todd Gurley horizon where they were the stars of yesterday, and now they no longer have a football team, and potentially he's no longer a guy that you can even think about adding. And then also with Deuce Vaughn, a guy that I like that I have in our Dynasty League. It's a guy that we might get later down the line as a good Bucky Irving breakout in the next couple years for Dallas if they don't go running back in the draft. But for right now, I love Rico Dowdle for the rest of the year. I think that the Cowboys, with all Cowboys teams and fans every year, they have hope to make the playoffs. Statistically, mathematically, they could make a wild card. They have to have a lot of other things go their way. But the things that the Cowboys have to do is win out. And it starts with Monday night next week against Cincy. And by the way, Najee Harris had a great game against them. Not to mention a few weeks ago, J.K. Dobbins had a great game on Sunday night against Cincinnati. And then, they play Carolina the following week, which Bucky Irving, we just mentioned, had a great game. And then they get a Sunday night home game against Tampa. Then they go to Philly, which you mentioned could be tough. But, hey, if the Cowboys want any shot at even thinking of making the playoffs, they're going to need to rely on Rico Dowdle there because their pass catchers have kind of watered down there. CeeDee Lamb only had, 4 fantasy points this week. Not to mention he's currently questionable. And then Brandon, Cooks just came back from injury. Jalen Tolbert, Ferguson is still out. So this Cowboys team is definitely going to need to make Rico Dowdle their workhorse to win the next couple weeks. So definitely like that take there, Justin. For me, I'm going to go to another NFC East team, and I want to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles there. I mean, they had a phenomenal showing in Baltimore yesterday. If you kind of take away that late go-ahead touchdown that likely scored, they were en route to kind of only allowing 12 points, I believe, to the Ravens. And in my mind, I do still believe that Lamar Jackson is the MVP. If you want to make the argument that Saquon is now the leader, I wouldn't disagree with you there. But looking at what Philadelphia has been able to do their whole season, it's been quite impressive there, Justin. And I want to kind of break it down to you real quick. Their last loss was on, I believe, week 4 in Tampa. They allowed 33 points. My key takeaway now going forward is Philadelphia is a top 3 defense. Let me tell you why. They've allowed 16, 3, 17, 23, 6, and then get this, Justin, 18, 20, and 19 points in the last couple of weeks. So they've really only allowed 23 or less since that loss in Tampa, which is quite impressive, Justin, because they go into Cincinnati, and Cincinnati's hot. Yes, they're a 4-8 team, but this offense is so dynamic, and they only allowed 17 points. And then they go to Washington, or they have a home game against Washington, and no matter if Jaden Daniels is on the road, I still like them to go over 20 points. They only allowed 18. And then last week against Los Angeles on Sunday night, they kind of locked Kyren. They forced a fumble. Matt Stafford seemed a little limited, and they had a late touchdown in garbage time to Cooper Kupp. So they really only allowed 13 points as well. And as well as this past week against Baltimore, they only had 12 points allowed all through that final scoring drive where, like I mentioned, likely scored. And so this defense has been ferocious. Those Georgia Bulldogs that they've drafted have kind of come into life. And not to mention Cooper DeJean there, kind of had some good stops there. I think he had an interception. I'm not sure. I think he had a big time play yesterday. And they did this on the road in Baltimore, where there wasn't really any crazy weather conditions. It wasn't that cold. Both teams had fair shots. They both teams were healthy. So my takeaway is Philadelphia is a top 3 defense going forward. To finish this takeoff, they do get Carolina next week at home. Then they get the Pittsburgh Steelers, which that's going to be a great game. Then they go to Washington, and then they end their last 2 games with Dallas and New York there. The Giants have been a dumpster fire there. So I like this Philadelphia defense to finish as a top 3 defense.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, if you look at the way they've looked, as you mentioned, the last couple of months, I mean, they only allowed one game over 20 points, and that was to the Jaguars. But they really, allowed less because it was a defensive touchdown in that Jaguars game. So they've just been on it. And I think that most of the credit really goes to Vic Fangio. I mean, if you look at the Dolphins, which was where Vic Fangio was coaching last season, they were 3rd in sacks. If you look at this year, I believe they are like bottom 10. Like they have fallen off a cliff. They're 31st in sacks. So they went from 3rd to 31st in sacks. With Vic Fangio leaving their team. So it's a clear change of the guard, and it's because of Vic Fangio's play calling on the defensive side. Obviously, we saw Vic Fangio as a head coach. Didn't work out, but as a coordinator, he's balled out. And I didn't expect this game to go this way. Baltimore's offense has been, one or two best in the league in scoring points. Lamar still had a good fantasy output, but it just wasn't that kind of game. And I know they missed some field goals. Tucker missed, I think, 2 or 3 field goals. It was a really bad day for him. But the Eagles are just continuing to show up on the defensive side. I don't want to start just about anybody unless they're like your star, set and forget players against them. So moving forward, I think they're going to continue to dominate. So I like that take there. Moving to my last take is I'm really, really, really worried. I'm hitting the panic button for Breece Hall. Things have just gotten a little out of hand for him there. I mean, a guy named Isaiah Davis scored a touchdown over him this week. Breece Hall's just fallen off. I don't know what it is. Kene Nwangwu got as the same amount of points as Breece Hall did this week. He got only 12 carries in a game that was pretty close, and I think they were winning for a good portion of it. So you're thinking, where is Breece Hall? This Jets team is just too weird to get ahead of, and I know Breece Hall's got this cake schedule, and I think that's the only way he's successful. It's just the Jets just are not using him right. They're a dumpster fire. They're drama central. It's just not working for me, and you might have to start him every week, but to me, I'm getting more and more pessimistic.
Yeah, Justin, I can see why you feel that way with Breece Hall. I think yesterday's matchup against Seattle was a little bit of a shaky one. And I do think that there's a lot of things going on that we know of in the Jets and some that we don't know of. And one thing that remains constant is that Breece Hall is the workhorse guy, and you got to believe that they're going to go with him going forward. Looking at his schedule, they do get Miami next week. And then they get Jacksonville first week of the playoffs, so that's good. And then they get LA Rams there, which could be really good. Kamara had a great game this week, and then last week, obviously, Saquon had a historical game. And then they get Buffalo, which is one of the worst rushing defenses as well. Christian McCaffrey was looking good his first couple plays in last night's game, and then he got hurt. So you can make the argument that if Christian McCaffrey plays that whole game, there's not a big, snowstorm there in Buffalo. He could probably end up with 100 total scrimmage yards there. And so I would say this. I wouldn't panic just yet. But definitely that matchup against Jacksonville is really going to tell me all I need to know. Just because they're kind of one of the easiest, teams to run on. Joe Mixon had a great game yesterday against them. And so I'm not ready to panic yet. But here's one thing to consider there, Justin. If for some reason Aaron Rodgers does get benched and they go with Tyrod Taylor or someone else, I actually like Breece Hall better there, Justin. So I think if you're, Dewey Nation, if you guys are Breece Hall owners, I do think that you kind of are rooting for a Aaron Rodgers benching, just because I kind of believe that puts more emphasis and attention on Breece Hall, and the coaching staff are kind of just going to want to run the football compared to throwing. And who knows, maybe Devontae Adams is going to want to bench himself just because his boy's not playing. And so that's going to help a lot for Breece Hall, as well as catches for Breece. So I wouldn't panic just yet. Let's see what happens next week going into the fantasy playoffs. For me, Justin, I'm going to go with the team that isn't going to make the playoffs, but some of their players can help you in the fantasy playoffs. And I'm talking the Tennessee Titans there. Looking at the first part of the season, it looked kind of disastrous. But now, yes, they didn't have too much of a great game in Washington yesterday. But looking at their schedule going forward, they get Jacksonville at home next week. And then they get a home game against Cincinnati, which in Tennessee, Justin, there isn't much weather conditions that, it doesn't really get too crazy cold, too crazy raining there. And then they go to Indianapolis. And then they go to Jacksonville for championship weekend. So what is my point here, Justin? I think that the Titans players are reliable in the fantasy playoffs for Dewey Nation out there. Let me break it down to you. So Will Levis there is kind of he didn't have too bad of a game there, but he's kind of grown on me as far as a fantasy quarterback there. Tony Pollard is at the cusp of 1,000 yards rushing. Calvin Ridley is having a decent season. And now the breakout of Nick Westbrook-Ikine, who's had 3 straight fantasy, great games there. And I'm really liking this Tennessee offense going forward. I don't think they're kind of in the tanking mindset. I think that they're kind of in the mindset of just scoring points and just finishing the season strong there. I like Tony Pollard's schedule. I like Calvin Ridley's schedule. I like Will Levis to be in shootouts all the rest of the way there. So if you look at the Titans, I think they're very reliable going forward. Tony Pollard did have a bad game yesterday, which actually leaves me optimistic for him to turn it around the season and kind of have his second career 1,000-yard season. I think he had one in Dallas. But you know what, Justin? I think that even Ridley can finish strong. So I'm going to tell Dewey Nation not to hesitate on benching their Tennessee Titans players for the rest of the season.
Yeah, no, I think they're all kind of interesting. I mean, Pollard didn't have a great game on Sunday, but he's been very solid this season. And then the receiver game, Ridley and Nick Westbrook. I mean, Westbrook-Ikine just continues to get in the end zone, man. It's been very impressive to see. I feel like a lot of fantasy managers, like maybe I picked them up, but can I really trust on starting him? No, to me, you can't trust starting him, but it's worth the risk. I mean, he's been getting touchdowns every week, and he's got a good matchup next week against the Jags. So I agree. I think there's definitely the top 2 wide receivers, and Pollard you can start. Will Levis is maybe more of a DFS play in my mind, but they've been more exciting than I thought they would be after the first few weeks of the season. So I like that there. Dewey Nation, those are our takeaways for from week 13 of the NFL season. As we head to week 14, just check it out. We're going to post our waiver wire show, and then later in the week we'll post more. But thank you guys for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. We love all those things. And send us out.
Yo, Dewey Nation, this was our takeaways of the week. Let us know what you guys think, and if you guys can add some takeaways of your own, we love to kind of hear everybody's opinions and takeaways and thoughts on what they think throughout the season. The season is getting old. A month from right now, we'll be heading into week 18, and we'll kind of have an idea on which teams are going to the playoffs and which teams are going to be picking in the top 5 there. So thank you guys for watching. We hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving week. We love you guys, and as always, peace.